All right, we got another new amp on the workbench here. This time, a Fender Showman. I've never worked on one of these. This is a pretty cool amplifier. I don't know a ton about offhand. I do know they came in a Showman as well as a dual Showman, which had to do with the cabinet they came with, but were otherwise identical as far as I remember. But yeah, very cool amp, and a friend just picked this up, and so we're gonna take a look and see what needs to be done. And this is exactly what we like to see here. So appears to be largely all original. We do have a recap, at least to some degree. We got the cathode bypass caps swapped there. Everything else, first glance on the board, looks very good. Perhaps a replaced resistor there, just judging by the solder joint. But yeah, it looks very, very good. Moving on down, it looks like we've got a new solder joint there, a bit messy, but looks pretty solid. Moving on down, we're just doing a quick look over here. We got all of the original diodes back there, seemingly. We've got a bias cap. Looks like they used a radial instead of an axial, so it's a bit goofy looking, but functionally is fine. We've got the ground connection soldered to a for the three-prong power cord. It's soldered to a lug there. We've shown before why that can be problematic, but this appears to be pretty solid. We've got all of the original screen and grid resistors. Some of them look quite toasted. In fact, yeah, all of the grid stoppers look pretty roasted. I'm guessing we're probably gonna have to swap all 8 of those resistors on the tubes. And then you'll notice right here that this is an export model. So if I bend it up a little bit, you can see that. So yeah, it allows you to select different voltages, which is kind of cool. Now, I've never turned one of those. Okay, so it's a little weird because I couldn't see the white line there. So it is on 117, but this big long part behind it makes it look like it's maybe this is pointing to 230. It's a little confusing, but nope, we are in 117 volts, so that's totally fine. And yeah, everything looks really good. Nothing crazy here. Probably don't have to do anything with the cathode bypass caps. Those all look okay. So let's go ahead and flip it over and look at the transformers real quick and check out the doghouse. All right, so we're looking at the transformers now. This is 606512, so pointing to 1965. 606602, so this is pointing to 1966. So this is kind of interesting. This is an early 65 power transformer and early 66, so they're about a year apart there. Let's see what's on this one, the output. 606515. So these two are both from early 65, and this is from early 66. You can see the chassis code on there, inked on there. So let's this all looks good, all original. Everything looks solid here. Tube sockets appear all original as well. Let's see what's in the doghouse. Interesting. All right, let's go ahead and confirm there's no voltage in it. So no voltage there. So it appears we've got 4 original caps and yeah, and then 2 caps that were put in series to replace 1 original cap here. This is another example. It's kind of weird. We've gotten a few of these recently where somebody's done work to the amplifier, but instead of, you know, like replacing all the caps, they replace 1 or 2. With the 61 Super we're working on, somebody replaced 3 of the 7. In this case, they replaced 1, and they didn't have the right value, so they took 2. Oh wow! So this is a 247 microfarad caps here, and they were going for the 20 microfarads. This would have had 3 of these right here. And we do see these in this era. I've seen it a few times where you've got these General Electric electrolytics alongside the Mallorys, so that's fairly typical. They look fairly clean. But we will, of course, be replacing all of those because there's no reason not to. So we will have 3 F&T 20 microfarads and then 2 80 microfarad 350 volts, if I remember correctly. Let's go ahead and check those resistor values real quick. So this is brown, which is 1, black 0, red 100, so it should be 1K. And then this is, I can barely see it from my perspective, looks like maybe yellow, violet, red, so it should be 4.7K, right? 4.7, yeah. So let's go ahead and quickly, I will flip the amplifier back over, and I'm going to go ahead, pull up the schematic, and check all of the resistors just to make sure none are way out of spec, but it looks largely untouched. This should be a fairly non-intrusive project. All right, so we've quickly gone through the entire amplifier here and looked it over, and there are actually a lot of resistors that were borderline. So I'm going to talk to the owner and see what he wants to do exactly for those. Definitely some resistor swaps here and there. I think this amp, being a more powerful amp, you know, it's got four 6L6s here, solid state rectified, higher voltages. It's just harder on resistors than most of the stuff I work on, so you end up with more stuff out of tolerance. So to quickly run through what I identified as being needed, so the 470 over here, the 1 watt, that's out. We're going to replace this bias cap. It's an old Mallory, and I just think it's better to replace that one. All of these are completely, all the grid stops weren't very good on the testing, but this one in particular measured about double what it should here, this 1.5K. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it is straight up black. So we will be replacing all the grid stop and screen resistors. The bias we'll have to play with, you know, once we get it up and running. So we'll see on that. Both of these, the 100K and the 82K, are both supposed to be 5%ers, which they are, but tested out of tolerance there. Let's see. A lot of the 100Ks were out. 100K there is out. 220K was out. Moving on down here, the plate resistors were, one of them was fine. The other three were borderline, so I would recommend just doing all four of those. The 1.5K on this side was bad. The 1.5K on that side was fine. That measured almost 2K. And then, yeah, and then up here, everything else is fine. On the pot side, the resistor for the trem speed was a bit out, but that's fine. That doesn't need to be replaced. And then we already checked the resistors in the doghouse, so it's just those caps, this cap, and then, you know, maybe half a dozen resistors or so. Actually, more than that, because we've got 8 right here. So we're going to go ahead and stop right there, talk to the owner, and figure out next steps.